Yeah, people are so tender. They have been through so much. They have just been through so much. Yeah, we're sort of starting to just barely deal with this idea of our collective trauma in all the many places we've had trauma, and we're just starting to get up our. I mean, there's been people that have been more forward in this discussion, but the larger group is just starting to realize, like, oh, we've had, all kinds of abuse or all kinds of addictions or all kinds of trauma or racism or sexism or genderism, or all, like, we're just starting to look at, like, what were we living in, and why are we still doing those rules when we don't have to anymore? We can just say no to that.
Welcome to the Can't Be Uncensored podcast, Season 3, Episode 29, Part 1, with my guest, Sara Wiseman, visionary teacher of spiritual intuition, founder of Intuition University, has taught hundreds and thousands of students worldwide, has created award-winning courses and trainings, and is an award-winning author, and has written over 16 books, has a blog, hosts a podcast, and many more things. I have found that this is like a dream come true, talking with Sara. We had such an incredible conversation that I'm so excited for you to hear as we sit down and talk about the why Sara's path led to who she's become, and the collective consciousness of one. Oneness is everything and who we are here to be. I cannot wait for you to grab that cannoli and that coffee and take a listen. Here we go. Hey, Sara.
Hello. Hi there.
Welcome. Hi
Hi.
there.
Nice
Thanks
to see
for
you.
coming. Oh, it's
You
good to
bet.
have you. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know what this feels like? It feels like an excited first date.
First date. Okay. Haven't done those for a long time, so we'll
Nor
see
have
how that
I.
goes.
And nor have I. And why I say that is because I'm just so excited to have you here because I just adore you. And I
Oh,
know that this is a special opportunity for us to be together. So that's why I say that.
thank you. That's nice of you. Well, I'm happy to be here. So good.
You're welcome. And I want to just kick off. I've already done an intro about you. So
Okay.
I just wanted to share. But Sara Wiseman, thank you so much. And welcome to the Can't Be Uncensored podcast, where I'm looking forward to like hanging out around the campfire with you and just having a girl chat, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that I met you in 2019, in spring 2019, maybe summer. And I think it was because your information popped up on social media at Intuition University.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kismet for me
Mm-hmm.
because I literally had just been like, where is my intuition? God bless it. I need to get in touch with her.
Uh-huh.
And then your program, your Intuition University popped up, and I went, okay, wait a minute. I'm just gonna follow this guide. And it was so out of character for me to do that. It was like blind faith,
Interesting.
truly blind faith. And the fact that you popped up when you did, because I literally was like throwing my stuff in the car from a job I had just wrapped after being on a project for 3 years. And it culminated at the very end to be, sadly, this very toxic environment that I was just like, oh my God, get me away from these people. Hence, where is my intuition? And
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
knew where it was, and my intuition was to get the heck away. And literally, the Virgo throwing her stuff in the car, which the Virgo never does, throwing my stuff in the car, get away as fast as you can. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember it like it was not yesterday, but I remember it.
I actually remember some of this car stuff now that you're mentioning this. I remember some of this, though. That wasn't a lifetime ago, but we have all been collectively through like so much since 2019, 2016, wherever you start to count it from. It's been a lot these last
It's been a
number of
lot.
years. Yeah.
And I think it was a gift to actually have these last 4 years traveling on this journey with you and all the beautiful people that you collect under your wings and do this life path journey, not together individually, but come together
Yeah.
and have these conversations that many people don't get to have
Yeah, I
and,
think, yeah,
really
yeah,
grow from.
you're right. I think I started the Intuition University back in maybe 2012, so quite a while
Mm,
ago. And
mm.
that was just with the like 6 people. And I didn't expect I didn't expect it would grow like it has, but also I didn't expect that my own experience would be like you just said. People are having their own explorations of their lives and their selves. And I didn't understand I was going to get to witness that at the level I did. And I'm kind of in awe of everyone. I'm just like, wow, people are doing their work. They're, very brave. They're very tender, all the ways that people are. I didn't expect to see it at that level so up close and personal, which has been really an honor. That's been pretty cool.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, like you said, you started out with a small group and it's turned into, these courses of action, I say,
Yeah.
of, learning these tools and learning, I mean, for me, I literally just wanted to find, just align with people who I could have this talk with because I've been talking this talk for a long time. But who do you
Mhm.
talk this talk with?
Right.
And it kind of comes and goes, those kind of sources and vessels and sources of light and people. And consistently speaking, you've been and your group, your Intuition University programs have allowed for people to keep coming back and grow and expand and really find not only their way, but ways of interacting with others who have these voices and these visions and
Yeah.
it takes courage to when we've had these conversations in class where it takes courage to like step out of this comfort zone and to say, hey, you too, oh,
Mm-hmm.
me too.
Mm-hmm.
And as you shared, now that we're coming into this, have come into this age of Aquarius, which is kind of funny to me because I think of myself as a little girl sitting on the edge of my seat watching theater, being a
Mm-hmm.
part of like seeing Hair for the first original
Mm-hmm.
production, and
Mm-hmm.
and being like the age of Aquarius, and so excited when they came out under the tarp nude. Like I couldn't have been
Mm-hmm.
more than 5 or 6. Like really, but that
Yeah.
makes sense for little Felicia.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents had the cassette tape. I think we were living in Switzerland at the time, and so I had like 3 cassette tapes, in English that were kind of modern, and that was one of them. They had gone to London to see it live on stage with the nudity, and I just had that tape. I was so little, and yet I played it over and over and over. What is this? The Age of Aquarius, the dawning of, and here we are. Here we are
And
now.
what's so amazing about that? To me, like just what came up for me was like planting those seeds that
Yeah,
manifested into the here we are. And that's
yeah,
everything we talk about in our
hmm,
empathic intuitive energy work is
yeah,
the how you manifest, how you align, how you plant those seeds, and how fascinating that we and I love and listen, I could never explain my sense of connection with you other than the obvious what we just were talking about. But to me it felt, I don't know why I say deeper, because that's all I can, that's just the word that
Mhm.
comes to me. I just feel a special, sweet connection that I love that I get to have with you, even though we don't have any more conversations than we have as a collective in these groups.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
share it with you because even that moment right now, a lot of people I couldn't have that. I wouldn't have had that
Okay,
conversation with.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I mean.
So there's an opening to parts of things that aren't normally discussed in society, even though society's opening up so much more than it had been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
To that point, when you so like you hear you've been on this path for some time, but I want to first off go back to little Sarah for a quick second because
Hmm.
I want to know what was little Sarah like 3, 7, where was she at that
Mm.
time and what was she thinking? And did it have any revelation to,
Hmm.
besides our
Hmm.
hair experience that we just shared, to who
Yeah.
you've become today?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, today is the anniversary of my father's passing. So that's interesting that we're doing that today. And what immediately comes up is he um, he had this game that we would play when I was like 3 or 4. And at that time, we had newspapers. And so he would put this, I don't know where, all these things came from, but there was this giant feather that we had, maybe from Halloween costume or something. And so he would put the feather or I would put the feather in the newspaper and he would fold it up. And then unbeknownst to me, he would, like let the feather drop into his lap or something. But I was just like so looking at the newspaper and then magically it would appear like in the bookshelf or from my ear. It was just so great. And I've never caught on that this was a magic trick. I just believed it's magic, that this was like total believer from the young age. And I remember seeing the flecks of dust in the air and really understanding like right away like the energetic connection of everything as our particulate nature. And I was the full-on fairy festival of one as a child. um, so the magic world was, I don't think I had any religion until maybe I don't know, school age, but the
Mhm.
magical child was fully activated, the spirit connection, the departed, the fairy world, nature.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, nature, nature, nature. And I would say I was pretty wild for a girl. I was allowed to be outside and rampaging around, in the fields and so forth, perhaps more than girls were allowed, which was really useful to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because you got to
yeah.
explore and
Hmm.
create, and I also relate to that because I grew up in nature. I
Yeah.
grew up in the city when suburban kind of, but I grew up also spending my summers at summer camp in the middle of the
Hmm.
woods. And so I got to explore and build with my hands and imagine and create. And, you know, I didn't realize, like I'm sitting and listening to you, it's like the first thing that comes to my mind and question I wanted to ask was if and when did that magic ever get
Yeah.
interrupted by life experiences? And do
Mm.
you remember when that occurred, when that magical moment kind of went, oh, shoot, here's life in reality?
Yeah. Um, I was pretty magical up until about 12, 14, until that adolescent time.
Hmm.
I think there was that first early magical stage, and then religion sort of came into it. I had a grandfather who wasn't very, very good person at all, but he he would take me from church to church to church, like these small country churches. Used to be like Protestant, Presbyterian, that kind of uh, mainstreamish Christian, sort of,
Yeah.
I guess I would call it at the time. But we would go to these tiny country churches. So like one time we'd go to, I don't remember the details. One time we'd go to Lutheran and they'd have the communion was grape juice. Then the next time we'd go to Presbyterian and the communion was wine. And the next time we'd go to this one and they would only have crackers, or, so I was exposed to a lot of an ongoing sequence of different churches. And then I went to Catholic school at a deeply mystical convent in Seattle, which blew my mind in terms of the mysticism. And it was like a very old building, ancient chapel. Like it was just steeped in these nuns. And so that there was that. So the magic and the religion came and they kind of melded. And then I suppose adolescence hit, and what was it, the disco era? I don't even know what's going on then, but then everything changed to, the more worldly parts of the world. So I was kind of innocent for a long time at
Yeah,
that point.
and it's interesting too because that is the time. I always say this is when that's actually at the age that girls should, in my humble opinion, should go to all girls schools
Yeah.
because of hormones and because you get lost in the
Oh
thing that
yeah.
deters you and gets you off your path and your purity and your clarity. And
Yeah.
why I think education wise, that's where that should go. Not because I did it, but that's what I recognize
Yeah.
from observing a lot of young girls.
You need that
Um,
protection. You need that protection from, you need more protection longer than we're given. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, as you were advancing in your education, when did you recognize that this was what life moments? I understand that you had a life moment that like really was your life bulb moment, but I want to hear from you. What was it that had you
Mm.
go, I need to really follow this path as a healer, as a teacher, as somebody curious. What was that for you?
Yeah, I would say that from my 20s to my early 40s, I was pretty lost.
Mm.
And I mean, it's not, not just me. Like, I think those decades are hard for people.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. And so in my early 40s, I had a near death experience that a lot of people have heard about. And some people say, oh, that's not really a near death experience. And I would like to argue anytime. So I did not see the white tunnel. I did not lie on the operating table being brought back to life, which does happen to some. But I would
Hmm.
argue that anytime anyone has any kind of trauma, an accident, an illness, where they're faced with mortality and they have that awakening that comes from being in that place, um, they have a shift in their awareness. So that is what happened. And so I was on a plane and the plane oxygen went away. And so all the masks dropped down, and I was traveling with my three children. One was just a really tiny infant, like 3 or 4 months old. And so it was just this super traumatic, like trying to get the masks on everybody. Um, but in that moment, I was just like, I've had such a full life.
Hmm.
I'm so grateful. I had the flashing of the life, like everything just came forward. I was so grateful. And I was so sad that my children weren't going to get to live to have the experiences that I'd have. And then this place of like, it sounds corny, but this is what happened. Like the golden light or the glowing light just filled the plane. And I felt that presence of God, which is what I would have called it at the time. And I just felt like angels were actually below the plane, like lifting us up. And it was just such a complete certainty of feeling like we were gonna die, and then suddenly we weren't. And after I got out of the plane, it's so interesting. So my dad was in the process of passing at not passing, but he was about to pass in a couple weeks. So I was going to visit him. And so I got off the plane. Um, went to see my parents. They're like, how was the flight? Oh, great. Just like totally not wanting to bother them at all. But I was just in this daze of like, what happened? What happened? And then really soon after that, processing with my father, right, in the hours before his death, being with him, and that added to my awakening. And then just being in a daze. And then shortly after that, all of my psychic stuff just started to pop open, like all the magic from childhood, all the spirit connection. It's like it had been forgotten or buried or repressed, or I don't know, but it just, like popcorn, just like, here's more, and it just all came forward. And I would say it was a pretty confusing time, like, because there was all this confusion over what happened on the plane, and then the loss of my father, and then all of this awakening, opening. And it was just like one of those big transitions of life where you don't really know what's happening, and you don't know where you're going, but you know that something big's occurring. Something big is occurring.
Chills, big chills.
Yeah. So, and I would add that I don't think people have to have any of these experiences to open their intuition. I think that's just what happened to me. Like, that's how I almost feel like if I hadn't had that big jolting experience, I would have just kept repressing and kept ignoring and kept pushing it away. It's like I was pretty stubborn, and the universe is like, we need the big scissors for this one, or we need the big shovel for this one.
Right.
Because of my stubbornness. Yeah.
Well, curious in knowing in your share, do you think with this series of events, do you think after being on the plane with the kids and having this moment of thinking you're going to die and then knowing you're not going to, and then of course the path of your father and your father's passing, and then all this stuff starts after the fog, so to speak, as in my words, then the clarity and all the magic starts happening. Do you think your father was a vessel and a source of saying, Sara, I love you, I know who you are, be it, I'm here for you,
That's so
I'm your guided
interesting.
angel?
It's funny because I actually felt that my father's passing freed me to go into this work, because it was not something that he would have understood or accepted. I never thought of it that way. Thank you for that. Maybe that's a message from him today. Yeah, yeah. It definitely, his leaving gave me room to step forward in this work, whereas I couldn't
I
have
really
before.
felt that, and I feel that because it's what I parallel it. So in your sharing, and the reason why I do this podcast is because, people have always told me, oh, you got to write the books because nobody's going to believe that you've gone through all these life evolutions. And as I think I've shared with you, I wanted to do this podcast probably, I lost track of time, let's say 9 years ago, roughly, whereas now we've been doing it for like a year and a half, give or take. And my reason for it was so I could, take my life experiences and other people's life experiences, and we could have this chat around the campfire. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, as currently I've gone through ovarian cancer. And as you're talking about, it doesn't have to be a life situation, but could be. And I've definitely, and this from our recent course, that we wrapped a little bit ago, that there's definitely been this feeling, there's definitely been this like, okay, I know I've been saying, I've been trying to figure this out, this one-on-one and talking to me, this in group talking with me, and how does this play and all of that. I just had another podcast with somebody who also had a life-threatening cancer, who came through it and is now affected powerfully, like, 250,000 people, and all the kind of conversations we had parallel. And when this feeling came about your father, it reminded me of when my mother passed 2 weeks before the pandemic shut the country down. And my mother, always believing in there's so much more for me, and hating what I do. And it's a strong word, and I don't normally use that word, but really just being like, you're too smart for this, sweetie. Enough with the bullshit individuals who are entitled unnecessarily and all the things. And she was very smart and very intuitive. And, would have written the plan out had she, and she would have loved to have written screenplays together and all the things, just like, she would have been there with the red pen, but with love, and my writing and my speaking up and my getting out of my comfort zone and even going public on social media with regards to this most recent months, I really do feel has been my mom being like, go for it, girlie, go for it.
Clearing
You have
all
nothing
the
to
paths.
lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearing all the paths.
Yeah. And so I think, it's funny because like when we do the work together in our groups, my guided angels that show up are one of our dogs that passed. Is always like I used to call him Centerfold, and his name was Nicky. He was just this ravishingly gorgeous, like cross between a Rottweiler and a few other things. He was just gorgeous. And he'll show up and be like, hey mom, let's go, kind of thing. And now since my mom has passed, since working with you, she'll always show up too. And it's interesting because in this fog that I'm going through since 6 weeks rather, out of my last chemo, and interesting that there's this writer's strike going on and all the things that are forcing you to not force, but to keep you from going back into the den.
Yep. Being blocked for sure. Yeah.
It's definitely given me space to go. I can't even say yes or no. I just can just say like, okay, I'm just going to stay over here and heal and keep doing my work and things that make me feel good. And when things don't, or people don't, it's like, I'm not participating in that. Yeah. And when I say like, I'm not participating in it, I'm not trying to come in 20 different ways and being the good little girl, Felicia. I might try, but now maybe radio silence shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't it feel interesting to do this part of your life that you've been waiting to do, and how natural it feels to you and how easy and how like you're really good at it, so why didn't I do this before? And like, doesn't that just feel so interesting? Like, this is pretty fun and pretty natural. Yeah.
It has, I had just said to my last guest, I said that, this has been that source of what surges me, what really gives me purpose and gets me, is my truth, is my curiosity for humans and interaction and conversation. And oh no, I promise you, 2 hours will fly by mentality. And and you'll be like, no way, man, I'm not sitting down for 2 hours. And I don't mean our situation, but I mean in general. And people are like, how did that just happen? And I'm like, because I believe this is what we all need. And we're so capable, and I know how to do it. I know how to break bread and do it with authenticity.
Yeah, to bring out to have transparent conversations about things that maybe aren't discussed a lot, in a way that can help people make sense of those things that are harder to put into words or harder to share.
Yeah. And that's definitely been my strength ever since I was a little girl. I'd be like the good little girl put together, but on the side, I'd be like, so tell me everything. And I don't mean like in a gossipy sort of way.
Tell
like
me,
people would come to me, tell me everything. Like I'll help you, I'll figure it out. But I wasn't really, it wasn't a manipulative thing. I wasn't like, tell me everything. People just knew that they could. And then I would help guide them.
Yeah, you can take all the elements and put the puzzle together in a way that makes sense. That's not forcing or not pushing, but just like, here's the clear path, go there. Let me, you're like the way shower. Like, let me just show you where you can go.
And it might be through form of entertainment. It might
Mhm.
be through a form of laughter. It might be
Mhm.
so direct that people are like,
Yeah.
she did not just, excuse me, fucking say that. And I'd be like,
Mhm.
I actually did. I know. I don't mean it to be so direct,
Mhm.
but it
Mhm.
just like,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, never harmful, because I know how I don't want to be hurt.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Definitely don't
absolutely.
want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, people are so tender. They have been through so much. They have just been through so much. Yeah, we're sort of starting to just barely deal with this idea of our collective trauma in all the many places we've had trauma, and we're just starting to get up our, I mean, there's been people that have been more forward in this discussion, but the larger group is just starting to realize like, oh, we've had, all kinds of abuse or all kinds of addictions or all kinds of trauma or racism or sexism or genderism, or all, like, we're just starting to look at like, what were we living in, and why are we still doing those rules when we don't have to anymore? We can just say no to that.
Well,
Yeah.
it is fascinating, and with that, how the it's kind of like, so there the universe will test you. Well, how committed are you to that state of being? Are you taking that
Mm-hmm.
stand or whatever? And here we are, faced in the current political times in our
Mm-hmm.
world, saying, "Oh, really? Well, we'll see. Let's take the rights of the women away, and let's show
Right.
the violence in the world, and let's do all the civic
Mm-hmm.
global things that we're going to do, and we'll see how you stand up to that or participate in that, or how passive you are or integrated you are." And I don't know, my observation, being a kid who was raised around the awareness of all that, and those discussions were had way more so than my peers were. No way in hell were my peers' families doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was the cultural upbringing that I was raised in, or just, the paths that people took, and knowing, that they were here to like create legacy or whatever their individual personal goals were, called my grandparents, great grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
and my parents. I just know that it really instilled in me like a vast foundation of interest and things
Mm-hmm.
that I have to talk about and keep teaching and keep integrating into conversation, and how that's a layered onion, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then how does it integrate with intuition, metaphysics, energy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
science, life,
Yeah.
purpose, passion.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought of myself as a unicorn or as a witch or
Mm-hmm.
magical. I thought myself as a visionary artist,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's I think the bigger idea is always oneness. And it's not just humans being one together, it's all the species and all of the life forms, non-life forms. It's not just about the inhabitants of Earth, or even, and certainly not just the human inhabitants. It's the whole shebang of oneness. And then you've got these little derivals of, like, say, politics, which is just this tiny little piece, like in terms of time frame, like it's just a little piece of dirt on the giant explosion that is oneness. And that's just so transitory. And it's kind of interesting because politics, it just can't argue against oneness. Politics is so tiny, and
Mm-mm.
oneness is the answer, in my opinion. So it's interesting to watch these waves of ideas go through, and know how many lifetimes we've been here and how many lifetimes we're going to come around, and just like, wow, we're still working on this little drivel of dirt. Like, what? This is uh, just not something to follow. And I like to look at like, say you say magic, like you can have magic with C, or you can have magic with a K, which is kind of a different flavor. But um, magic is just, or spirituality, those things being the same, or science, it's just kind of noticing the oneness of everything and really observing it, like in your day to day. It's just noticing how everything's not only connected, but really flowing in a very particular manner, and we can just go along with that. We don't have to fight things so much or have all these opinions. We can just kind of go with what is. I like that idea of, I like that idea of, I've been working on two things personally for myself. I've been working on saying whatever I think, because sometimes my ideas are a bit out there for some people, or like I'm speaking in a language that not everybody knows, it seems like. And I'm just saying what I think. Again, as you said, with kindness. I'm not here to harm anyone as much as I can. But just taking the filters off and being more direct. And then also just being with, like, I think I tend to, or others tend to, be in my head a lot, all those stories spinning out. And I like to just be with what is and just notice, like, what's actually in motion or what's actually happening. And I find that those are both really useful right now in terms of all of the information we have coming in and all of our reactions. It's like, I'm just going to say what's in my mind, and I'm also going to just notice what is, and keeping it really simple. Sort of what I've been working on.
I think what's really interesting about that is that, and I didn't mean to jump on the tail end of your sentence, but what I think is interesting about that is, one, I think it's being direct. It's the most honest way, I think, that we can be taking care of ourselves, because you're speaking your mind.
Yeah.
And I think that in many realms, people don't get to do that, or that's not, I don't want to use the term beaten out of them, but they're, shunned from doing that depending on their environments, or don't be seen, don't be heard, all the things. So I think to use and find one's voice, and I think I've shared with you, like, even my voice sounds rough today, and my voice has been really rough since my last chemo treatment. And having my voice personally is a big deal, because through 4 bouts of thyroid cancer, I could have lost my voice, as I've shared with you. And so it is really important to step into my voice. And I do encourage others, which is why going public during these last handful of months was such a powerful thing, because I knew it was scary. And I knew I had no plan other than to be my truth and talk about advocacy, and using myself as the example of the why. And then to keep consistently doing it in my own different way, organically, has just been very freeing and very, just no different than what you said, flowing with it. And I've always been somebody who, in nature, that really resonates with me, because I've always loved being around water as much as I've loved being around trees. And I love being around nature in all ways, be it the animals, be it the sound, be it the everything. Doesn't matter, morning, noon, and night. And truthfully, I don't know why I didn't make, like, more of that my integrative. I mean, I work on all sorts of locations, of course, but I just am like, wow, I don't know why I just didn't make summer camp like my whole thing 24/7.
Yeah. Summer camp's pretty cool. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's a very good place to find your pure self.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I certainly know that I had that opportunity, and those are gifts that I carry with me, and I try to use as teachable moments, or the whys. Those things are, so valid. It has so much validity. But also, you're talking about being in the flow. I think it's and right now has been a perfect opportunity for that. Somebody like myself, who's used to working up to 80 hours a week and being committed to everyone and every other thing, just being good with being quiet, or just doing what feels right, or just being great with, like, the calendar that I create, that is my choice, not somebody else's choice. And
trusting, however that's going to turn out, is going to be divinely
It's
the
it's
thing and
gonna,
the where and
yeah,
the path, and it's gonna
yeah.
reveal itself as what it's supposed to be.
I love that idea of not having a plan, or even like, remember when, we used to get lost, like say you were at summer camp, right? I'm just picturing this little summer camp in Oregon out in the forest, and like if you got lost, you'd have to orient yourself by, well, there's where the river is, there's where the mountain is, here's the
Mhm.
sky. You'd just figure it out, and mostly you'd find, you didn't have your GPS, like, where am I? Oh, I don't have coverage. You just figured it, you just allowed yourself to intuitively know. And
Mhm.
that's the same as life now. Like, we can just kind of sit back, and we don't have to push everything. We don't have to force it. We can just let it happen. And kind of my practice is like, mostly I don't ever, I mean, I guess I used to, but now I don't really reach out to anything. I just let it, it's like, universe, if you want me to do something, you just let me know, and I'll say yes. And that's just how it is, versus I gotta do this, I gotta get these numbers, or like, that kind of like, that will work, but it'll work taking you on the wrong, I think taking me on the wrong path. If I'm trying to force it, I'm going to force myself in the wrong direction. Maybe I have
Mhm.
success, but it's the wrong direction, so how does that help?
Mhm.
Versus if I just flow with what is showing up, so I'll assess it. Is this good? Is this not great? But if it's good, it's just a yes. It's just
Yeah.
like a yes, and then we go to the next thing, and then that is how the path is navigated, not through some mind or ego, like, this is what I need to do. That's been really useful.
Yeah, I think to your point, I was even sharing yesterday that I think it's almost like going back to your childhood where you didn't have the conscious responsibilities. So you just got to show up being
Mm-hmm.
the little
Mm-hmm.
Felicia and the little Sarah, who today you're wearing a tutu on your Schwinn banana bike,
Yeah.
and tomorrow you're taking Jay Jackson under the tree and kissing him for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, so to speak, the experience is and the moment is. And I don't know why I randomly said those things, but the point is that there was no like, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be all these things to all these people at all times. You just get to be. And
Yeah.
yes, of course, a lot of stuff was going on around us or you and me, um, that we didn't have control over, good, bad, or otherwise, whether it was the environment we lived in, who we were born to, the house we grew up in, the kind of education we got exposed to. But us as source, us
Mm-hmm.
as energy, most likely we're in even if there was trauma around or had already marked us, there was still that purity, that bliss, that magic that got to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about yesterday, going, well, that's who I choose to be.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
choose to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
that little girl that knows how to just do that. And one thing integrates into the next, very fluid, very seamlessly, very like a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful dance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that just no, like the transitions are so smooth. You didn't even know the music changed.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. Well, we also, as we change in our age, we're little, and then we have that innocence, or that spaciousness in our, we just have that spaciousness available to us. And then we get into life, that goes along. But then as we get older, and I would say this process begins around 40, like, we're
Mhm.
we're struggling to learn everything until we're about 40, and then from about 40 on, we're struggling to forget everything we were told. And so it's this climbing up the mountain, and then with our pails, and then dropping the pails as we come back down. And um, this idea of getting more and more and more liberated from what people think, from the stories we were taught, just from our schedules. And I don't think it's even about, like, I think you can be a really busy person because some people are just really busy. They don't have the luxury of, shifting their schedule, but I think you can become free in your mind.
Mm.
Like even if you can't change your outer situation, your mind starts to become more and more free from that point of, I think in the 40s, just like, why am I here? What am I doing? Who am I? Why am I telling myself that? And then you just start to like let pieces go, let it go, let it go, let it go. And there you are, to that state of liberation, hopefully.
I think that I agree with you, and I can, it's like hearing a bunch of other people's voices. Like you can hear a bunch of people, whether they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, who, you know, and including myself at the same time at different points, just being like those questions are going off and don't know how to liberate themselves from those conversations in one's head. And you know how you know does everybody get given the key to enter through that gate? I mean, not because it's selective, and
Mhm.
we select you today versus no, you can't go past the gate.
Right, right.
Is that a choice? Do you feel, is that a conscious choice? Do you feel that's a learned choice? Do you feel that's awareness? Do you feel like that's a moment in time? Like, what would you say as a healer and a teacher to that?
Well, I think there's so many millions of paths, but I do think it's that idea of infinite. I don't think you have to have a dogma or a series of rules or a moral code or any of that. I don't think you have to have a certain diet or certain practices. It's really just understanding the oneness, and
Hmm.
from that very simple idea, you base every decision off of that, and you let go of all the ideas that don't correspond to that. So oneness would be infinite, like oneness. It's not just people. It's all species, but it's also time and space. So you get this infinite sense of infinite, and then you know that you're part of that. So all the decisions that don't relate to that, you just start dropping those. Like, you know, what does it matter if I don't know, I'm trying to like, I had a this isn't real, I'm just giving an idea, but like, so you have a fight with your neighbor. Okay, but we're in oneness, so I did that in this lifetime. Will I care in next lifetime? Maybe I can just let that one go. Maybe you have a big fight with your ex. Maybe that one's more important because it's a closer relationship, but maybe it's not. Um, Maybe you have some pretty big political beliefs around sexism or racism or genderism, and maybe those are really important because those are moving us closer towards oneness as a society. So you kind of just look at it from like, how does it relate to this bigger idea of
It's
the
really
infinite self?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
Because
interesting because go ahead. I'm
yeah, well,
sorry. Go ahead.
so much of life is just distraction, detail, and drama. It's like, come on, who cares? Like, I know people have, especially if you're dealing with people, that are more well known, or that have a lot of achievement, or um, there might be a lot of um, pride or joy in having reached a certain level, and not necessarily celebrity, but like all levels of business, or
Hmm.
like anybody who's had, they've worked, like they've worked hard, they've accomplished this and that, but then like, I don't know, it just, is that really the biggest part of your life? Like this idea of, what do people in their last moments, what do they appreciate the most? And I know in my own version of the near death experience, I just was in awe of the experience as a totality. I couldn't pick any one thing. It was just like, oh my gosh, I got to live. That was really something, and but I never thought, oh, I had this job, or oh, I had, it just, none of it made any difference. It wasn't even in the equation, really.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. And come back next week to hear part 2 of my conversation with Sara as we discuss not making a plan and how we have the opportunity to create awareness, respect, and as I said before, oneness. It's something that we hope with what all is going on in the world today, what we've come from, where we're going, our alignment with one another, one-on-one, and in the big picture is all about consciousness. And we have the power to shift. So where the spirit is young, the soul is wise, and the life experiences are vast. It's where we talk about everything here from soup to nut to what I like to say from cannolis, egg, and holes. And don't forget the s'mores. Join us next week. Have a great week. Much love. Bye for now.